tip this week is about seaming single rib, K1P1. And the important thing about any seam is that the seam not interrupt the stitch pattern. So that if I have knit, pearl here, and it ends on a knit, I need to have a purl here. Now this generally, if you're looking at a pattern and the number of stitches for ribbing is an even number of stitches, it's not a problem, because I go knit, pearl, knit, pearl, knit, pearl. Okay, I'm going to be starting on a knit, ending on a purl. And on my second piece, I'm going to be starting on a knit, ending on a purl as well. And so when I seam these, the seam should always be placed, because we're doing the mattress stitch basically, and you can review what I said about seaming stockinette. And this is the selvage stitch. This is the next column of stitches, and these are the horizontal bars between the two. That's what I'm going to be using to seam. And the same is true on here. Here's my selvage stitch, and there are my horizontal bars. Well, if I line this up, I've got knit, that's where I'm going to be seaming. This is where I'm going to be seaming, purl. So the seam is going to line up. It's going to be knit, purl, knit, purl. Now the problem comes, and I'll be seaming that in a minute, is when you have an uneven number of stitches, and you'll see this in a pattern sometime, and when that is the case, you need to make a decision. So I have knit, pearl, knit, pearl, knit, pearl, knit, same on the other piece, knit, pearl, knit, pearl, knit, pearl, knit, on the wrong side. Now one solution would be to knit one piece, knit, pearl, knit, pearl, knit, pearl, knit, and the other piece, pearl, knit, pearl, knit. But if I haven't thought about that and the piece is completed and I'm going to seam it, what choice do I have? Well, I cannot use my selvage stitch and the space in between, because I have knit and purl, then that's where I would be making my seam, and then I have selvage stitch, that's where I'd be making it, and purl. So it'd have knit, purl, purl, knit. Now one solution, other than, and in the blog I'll have a lot more ways to deal with this, is to use this selvage stitch itself. And I'll have a photograph of an example of that. The problem is that selvage stitches are generally kind of ugly, and I would, if I pull these apart, line them up so that it sort of looks like a knit stitch, but it's going to be pinched and not very attractive, so I may want to reconsider that. Now, as for the actual seaming, you want to make sure that you are seaming like to like. So here's the smooth edge of my cast on this side. Here's the smooth edge of my cast on here. Always want to check that, particularly if it's little pieces or something square. If it were a sweater, it would be fairly obvious. And I want to do a figure eight to start it. Now, I always start my figure eight with kind of the top stitch of the selvage stitch, the cast on, immediate below where I'm going to be placing my seam. So I put it in there, and I find that same location on the other side. And there it is, right there. Okay, so I've gone through both of those. Now, the reason why it's called a figure eight is I'm going to come up and I'm going to go back into that very same location. And if my yarn tails will stay out of the way, you see I have a lovely little figure eight. Now to do the seam, I go into the same location where I did my figure eight, okay, and I go into the same location here, go over, catch that next horizontal bar, and again, I knit these using gigantic needles so you can see the stitches. In the blog I'll have much prettier examples, you know, with swatches done on the right side needles, the proper size needles. Okay, and so this is pretty much just the mattress stitch, and when you're done you pull on it and voila, you have your seam. Now notice that my figure eight is pretty much invisible, and I have knit, purl, knit. Now again, this is ugly stitches because I've used such large needles, but you can see that the pattern is maintained.